And we're going. So, welcome to Boldly Keep Going. To Boldly Keep Going while stuck at home. I'm Brett Singer.
I'm Sharon Simon.
Live long and prosper. We will do
Live
that.
long and prosper.
There you go. So, Sharon's been encouraging me to watch Picard, and I finally did. And I got to tell you, it's really, Sharon, you're 100% right. It's a terrific show.
I love it. A lot of Star Trek fans are really anti-Picard.
Now, why is that? That fascinates me.
There's a few reasons, as far as I know, but I should have read up on this a bit more, but as far as I know, there's a couple of things. First off, it's very dark. The Federation has gone a very, anti-humanistic direction. You see, and I'm trying not to give you any spoilers. I'm not quite up to date, but I'm almost up to date, and I don't want to.
I'm only on episode 2, but
you're aware
you can tell that.
You're aware that they were involved in helping the Romulans and pulled out.
Now, did that happen in any of the movies, or is that new to the show?
That's new to the show.
Okay.
This. Again, I guess a little sketchy on exactly where you are, what you know, and I don't want to spoil anything, but Picard was involved in doing something, helping the Romulans. The Federation pulled out. Picard's not happy about that. He still wants to help the Romulans.
Right. Yes,
and as you go forward with the show, you'll find, and I don't feel I'm giving anything away, but I can't really answer your question without telling you this.
Fair.
There's an indication that there's want in terms even of Earth. Not lack, but want.
Interesting.
I might have something you can't have. Like you can't just be like, oh, I like that mug, I'm gonna go replicate one.
Interesting. See, I thought you were gonna say that maybe it's because it's TVMA and so coarse language and violence, at least the episode that I was on. But
that started with Discovery. There's even nudity in Discovery.
Oh, there is. Okay, I didn't realize that. But people must have had problems with that, right? I mean, I'm not saying everybody, but really, nobody minded?
I never heard anyone minding about the nudity in Discovery. I didn't. It's not. And I'm very sensitive to female objectification, and it is topless scene, but it's not that. Have you seen Discovery?
No, I haven't.
And it's the female character who is not a character of Star Trek femme fatale. She's not that, and she's raping, and she's topless in it. So it's like a violent scene. It's not that.
Okay, so it's not maybe exploitive, but in a different way.
It's just a little bit more graphic, and I'm not a fan of graphic anything. I'm a fan of Shakespeare. I'm a fan of suggestion, but it didn't bother me.
So there was a line that really stood out for me when Picard goes. I think it's in episode 2, where he goes to try and get a ship so that he can go out and find this robot guy. He said the Federation doesn't decide who lives or dies. And the officer's response is, it does. It absolutely does. And I just felt like that was so much about what's going on right now. I mean, talk about the government. The government doesn't decide who lives or dies. Well, guess what? Kinda.
Yeah, that's really, and I watched that episode. I should probably start again and rewatch it. But I started watching it when I had a small awareness that there was a pandemic potentially coming, but nothing like this. Nothing that we would be seeing our governor on TV saying, am I supposed to choose who lives or dies?
Yeah. I mean, that took on a whole new resonance. I guarantee you when they wrote that line, they did not think that was the case, that was going to have hit quite that hard. Now, I hope this doesn't spoil, but did Data die in one of the movies?
Yes.
Okay. That I did. I'm not completely up on my Next Generation movies.
Oh my goodness. You have to watch Resurrection.
Resurrection. Okay.
Not Resurrection. God, what's the
First Contact?
You know what? No, the last movie. The very last movie.
Okay. All right. I'll check that out.
Nemesis. You have to watch Nemesis.
Okay.
Yeah, I think the acting in it is absolutely fantastic. It's one of my favorite Star Trek movies. Again, I like it. A lot of Star Trek fans don't, because they think there are similarities between that movie and Wrath of Khan, which is probably the favorite movie.
Sure.
Uh,
Well, there's some similarities. I mean, at least on the bones of it, with Picard wanting to go back out and he's old. I mean, that's something that Kirk certainly did. Just he did it with the original crew. They go out looking for Spock and they're not really supposed to do that.
He's not that old. Kirk's not that old.
See, now that was interesting because you're right, but I thought this was sort of a better acknowledgement of aging. But I guess part of that is because Picard is really a lot older.
And there's aspect, as you'll see, he is frail. I think it's the first episode where he's protected by a young woman because he has trouble walking at times. It's an improv line when he says that his Earl Grey decaf.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
That was improvised. That's cute.
Yeah, yeah.
I thought that was actually quite nice.
Yeah.
If we're going to take improv from anyone, improv from Patrick Stewart is probably good. But so this was interesting. I'm going to try and read just only some of this because it's a little long, but this was in one of the Star Trek forums that I'm in. For those Star Trek fans living in the US and other parts of the world, you might be puzzled about the portrayal of the Federation in Picard. For us in the European Union, this is reality. The Federation, like the EU, is nice to live in. Healthcare is universal, depends on where you live. Your life can be quite carefree. However, like Clancy, I think Clancy is the one who said it absolutely does, that line. Lots of bureaucrats in Brussels.
Clancy, who's in The Next Generation as a young
Oh, is that right? She looked so familiar. Yeah. Was her hair always white, or is that
No, her hair is like auburn.
Okay, because I was like, she looked so familiar, and I just didn't quite place it.
She works with Geordi.
Oh, that's so cool. See, that's another reason why Star Trek is great. I mean, they respect the world in a way that I really don't know. I mean, I love the Marvel movies, and I think they're terrific, but they replaced the Hulk, and it was like, whatever. Like, to my knowledge, they've never replaced a character in that way, except if you go with this new timeline thing. But then they explain it by saying it's a new timeline. So it's legitimately a different thing. It's not the same Kirk. It's not the same Spock.
Correct.
They never replaced, unless I'm wrong, they never replaced a character in that way. I guess there's somebody playing Pike now, like a younger Pike, but I feel like that's different.
But that's on Discovery, which is an alternative.
Discovery is another alternative timeline.
Yeah. And I'm trying to think if anybody is actually ever replaced. I can't imagine just 1980 TV. They did that all the time.
Right.
So, you're not that I can remember. Somebody watching this might
you could never see. Nobody could be Picard except for Patrick Stewart. I mean, nobody could be Kirk except for William Shatner. I would say nobody could be Spock except for Leonard Nimoy. Zachary Quinto, I thought, did a terrific job. But again, it is a different Spock. It is not, it's not Spock Prime or however you want to call it.
Young Spock on Discovery makes me uncomfortable.
Really?
And it's not the actor's fault.
It's just the concept of somebody that's not Leonard Nimoy.
Everything about him just doesn't feel like Spock to me.
Now, what did you think of Zachary Quinto?
He's great.
That's the thing. He nails it.
Yeah.
He 100% nailed it. So it really, you say it's not the actor's fault. Maybe it's not his fault exactly, but there is something to be said for good casting. I mean, Zachary Quinto was clearly an inspired choice, and he really.
I don't remember the actor's name, but the actor who plays Khan in the new movies, I really, and again, not the actor's fault, just horrible casting. Ricardo Montalban is like sexy and warm and charismatic, and like. He's like the most interesting man in the world. Like anybody would want to have a drink with him, even though he's a bad guy. And so the guy that they have, I can't remember the actor's name, but the guy that what's his name?
Benedict Cumberbatch.
He's cold as ice and feels dangerous.
I like those movies for what they are, but I thought that movie was a huge mistake and a real missed opportunity. Like I did not need to see a remake of Wrath of Khan. It was unnecessary and it was a weird choice. And like you're talking about, as you say, the most beloved of the Star Trek movies, and you're going to do, I mean, it's not exactly a remake, but it's kind of a remake. And it's, like when it was the least surprising moment in movie history when he goes, "My name is Khan Noonien Say," and we're like, duh, it was so obvious.
Yeah.
It was so tremendously obvious. But I thought it was interesting that these guys were comparing it to the EU. So take the current COVID-19 crisis. The EU did not take a strong leadership role, mostly set back, like how the Federation reacted to the Romulan crisis. Does that sort of jive with you? Does that sort of go along with what you know of the show?
No, I don't think. I mean,
How do you mean?
I think that what's happening now is not dramatic in the way, you know, they were helping the Romulans and then they just all of a sudden decided not to and pulled out completely. Again, there is a thought currently, and it's interesting. I'm seeing on Facebook that friends of mine are deciding that they're going to go back out as well. So there's a thought that regardless of what's going on, let's just go back out.
How do you
Let's
feel about how do you feel about that?
It makes me very uncomfortable.
I mean, I have a friend who said to me, you know, we should just all wear masks and then we can go out. And I was like, but that's not what they're telling us. Like, that's not what the smart people are telling us. Like, that's not what Bill Gates is saying. And I know Bill Gates isn't a scientist per se, but I mean, I consider him to be a smart guy. And certainly someone with resources to help in this, and as near as I can tell, is doing what he can do to help. I don't know exactly, but I mean, he's certainly putting a lot of money towards it. Unlike Mike Bloomberg, he's not running for president. He's decided to help with the COVID-19 crisis. And he said, we're probably going to need to stay inside for at least another 6 weeks. And I'm like, okay, you know, I'm not loving that, but I get that. And that seems that lines up. That's logical, if I may be so bold. Like, that lines up. Whereas, you know, screw it, I'm going outside. It's like, really? Is that a good idea? That doesn't seem like the right thing to do.
It bothers me, everybody in my life, with the exception of my father, and I'm the opposite side of the coin than most people. My father's 85. He's on dialysis. He has autoimmune issues. He lives with a chronic form of leukemia. He is completely what they're talking about when they say people who are at high risk. So he is a couple of things. First off, I do think that the president's making it seem as though it's not as big a deal as it is, which makes my father, who's somebody who tends to trust men who have more money than him, as to be authorities. And my father is also believes people to be good and honest in general. Like, it's hard for him to imagine that somebody wouldn't care if so there's that. But on the same token, if he wants to take that risk, that's his right.
Okay.
He's lived, and if he feels like going out to dinner with his girlfriend is worth it, it's not for me to tell him it isn't. It breaks my heart, but it's not for me to tell him that it is. But when I see, and which I have seen, comedians who are very young and very healthy toward the end, right before everything shut down, going out and performing at clubs that they wouldn't normally have opportunities to perform in because they were the only ones willing to go out and perform, it makes me cranky. And it makes me see them in the same light as I see somebody who wears fur. It's not like I hate people who wear fur, but I remember it.
Interesting. I didn't know that was happening. People who sort of getting an opportunity that they wouldn't otherwise get. I wasn't aware of that.
Yeah, I didn't show up to spots. Did you show up to all your spots?
I don't know. Did I have anything? I feel like everything that I was going to do was canceled. I'm not sure. I'd have to think about it. I remember my last show. It was at Greenwich, but and it was things were definitely real at that point. Like, things had definitely gotten real. The jokes that did the best were the coronavirus jokes.
Yeah, my last night out was at Broadway. It was the Tuesday right before I decided it was time for me to go in and stay in as much as I absolutely can. And I wish I had taped it. My coronavirus jokes killed.
Right, exactly. Yeah, no, those did really well. I think I think they wanted to hear it. And also, you know, those are audiences. I mean, I don't know about the show you were at, at Greenwich, it was a tourist audience. I think there was one couple I think it was one couple from New Jersey, but otherwise, you know, everybody, there was one person who had just been walking by, they were in town, you know, they weren't even with somebody, they were there alone. And I think they wanted to hear something funny about coronavirus. They were definitely ready to laugh, but specifically about that. Yeah. So, you know, I try to imagine what it's going to be like going back to it and how audiences are going to respond. I just think they're going to be really grateful. I mean, you know, maybe I'm wrong, but I have a feeling that people are just going to be so happy to be out and be in a club.
I completely and totally agree. I live in an area, without giving away exactly where I live, but where I live is very, very dangerous just to be anywhere. So I'm not going anywhere. Like, even I finally got food ordered. I'm excited because food's coming. It means I don't have to go out, but I try to open the window and just breathe in fresh air every day, and it feels amazing.
Yeah.
You know, I took that for granted most of my life.
If you're stuck on a starship, it's all fake air. It's all recycled air, right? I mean, that's something. Occasionally, I feel like McCoy would comment on that. Who's the cranky one in the Next Generation? Who sort of takes that Dr. McCoy cranky role?
There isn't anybody who's exactly cranky, but there's somebody with a mental illness who's got like very severe anxiety and social issues. Barclay on Next Generation. Barclay is played by the same actor as he's Murdoch on the A-Team.
Oh God, he was on Next Generation?
He was not only on Next Generation, he's also on Voyager. And yeah.
Oh, I had no idea. God, boy, did I love me some A-Team when I was a kid. I used to love
he's
that.
Great.
And Murdoch was that's funny that I wonder if that's sort of his thing, is sort of playing, characters.
Yeah, mentally ill, anxious characters. So he's actually afraid of the transporter.
Oh.
And he ends up in a transporter accident, and he has issues with women, so he creates this like holodeck program where he's interacting with Troy and Dr. Crusher, and they find it, and he's always on edge. He's in engineering. He works with Geordi, so but he doesn't comment on the stale air ever.
Okay. I'm saying that, and maybe a Star Trek fan will correct me, but I feel like that's the kind of thing McCoy has complained about. I mean, and certainly other characters have complained about replicator food. Like, to me, replicator food is the greatest thing in the world, especially now, obviously, because you're worried about getting fresh direct. I haven't been able to get a time slot. Like that's sort of become like a real that's become a currency almost at this point.
So the way to get a time slot is to remind yourself what it felt like to be 17 and try to get concert tickets. You just have to make it everything. And you have about a minute and a half window. And you have to get the connection, and you just have to land on it right.
Oh, okay. I like that. So, okay. Because, yeah, I mean, we got a lot of food. We're in pretty good shape, but you want to restock. You want to keep catching up on stuff. What else in Star Trek would make it easier? I mean, transporters, because the thing is gathering, like if somebody got a disease, and I feel like this has happened on the original series and on Next Generation, like there have been disease episodes, haven't there been, where things just spread? And I'm not going to, I of course can't think of what it is, but I feel like that's not an uncommon thing.
I feel like there's an episode in the original series where everybody has spots all over them.
Oh, yeah. Well, oh, God. This is not that, but I'm thinking the aging one. There's the one where they all get old.
Mm-hmm.
But that's sort of a different kind of thing. And what are the spots? Oh, I can't remember what that is. Yes, absolutely. That was definitely a thing. And again, like we talked about last time, McCoy's walking around zapping everybody with stimulants if they need it, so they can stay upright. Cup of coffee's not going to do it. You better get with 100 cc's of Ritalin or whatever the hell they zap them with. But yeah, I mean, being a starship would be a really bad place for COVID-19, because what are you going to do? I mean, there's only so much distancing you can possibly get to. You got to run the ship.
So there is also another aging episode where people are getting very sick and dying on the Next Generation, and it is a Dr. Pulaski episode. And what happens are these scientists create these super charged, genetically engineered children who can fight off any disease. So these young people their bodies are proactive and look for things, and their bodies give things off that age the people around them and make the people around them very sick. And Dr. Pulaski ends up infecting herself while she figures out what exactly is wrong. And they think that the children are immune. So they push to bring the children aboard, but of course Picard fights that.
Right.
There's also a really great episode, if you haven't seen it, that I highly recommend. I can't remember the name off the top of my head. Picard is not on board when it happens, neither is Data, but everybody ends up going back to what they originally were in terms of evolution. So I believe Riker becomes some kind of an orangutan, and Troy becomes some kind of lizard. Worf becomes some kind of monster trying to have sex with Troy, who's, sort of sitting in a bath as an amphibian.
So like sort of humanoid versions of what they were, like not like a lizard, but like sort of a lizard human, like a.
Yes. Yeah.
Interesting. That sounds interesting. I like that. What about entertainment? If we talked about this last time, then stop me. But like there's the episode, and I've never seen it, but there's the episode with Joe Piscopo on Next Generation. Doesn't he play a stand-up comic?
Yes, he's in the he's a holodeck character that's teaching Data what it means to laugh.
Okay.
And Guinan, Whoopi Goldberg, is trying to help him learn how.
Okay. So I mean, so there's like
all the jokes are so old. It's nothing that would make people laugh today. It's corny,
right.
And I think Joe Piscopo is very funny.
Well, just because he was very talented, he just sort of, he married his babysitter and got hepped up on steroids. I mean, he had some personal issues. I mean, Joe Piscopo. He's
from New Jersey. I mean, that's.
Yeah, I guess so. There's a crazy thing. He did some kind of, I don't know what it was. Like, it wasn't like it wasn't a major talk show. Maybe it was like some kind of local talk show where he sang to the woman he married, the one he met when she was like 15, and said, "When you get of age, I'm going to marry you." And it's so creepy. Yeah, it's super, super creepy. I mean, he's saying now she's old enough, but it's just that whole concept of, oh, when you get old enough, I'm going to marry. It's like, ooh, God,
But people still like Woody Allen.
Oh, I love Annie Hall, but I don't really, I don't know when I stopped seeing the Woody Allen movies, but it definitely was, there was a point. I still did check in after the Soon Yi thing because I was like, well, maybe I can separate. And then there was a point when I just couldn't anymore because it's just like, dude, okay, yes, she's not technically your daughter, but she also technically is your daughter. So it just depends on how you look at it. That's super creepy.
But there's, to me, there's a separating someone's art from their personal life. So you may or may not be aware, but Patrick Stewart recently got married to somebody much younger than us.
Yes.
And I was asked what I felt about this. And it's interesting because the only reason why I have an opinion, my favorite artist in the world is Roland Orzabal. He's the thought pilot in Tears for Fears. He's the one who writes most of the lyrics and most of the music. And he struggled. His wife was battling cancer, and it was a very long thing. And about 6 months after she passed, he got engaged to a very young woman. I have an opinion on this because I saw his fans attack his fiance so hard that even though she was an artist in her own right, she took all her social media stuff down because she wanted to be attacked. And I thought about it. I'm like, our relationships with the people we are fans of are one-sided. It's one-sided. They give us art and we enjoy their art and that's it.
Right.
We don't get a say in how they live their lives. At least I don't think. Even if how they live their lives is to marry their daughter. And I don't like Woody Allen for other reasons because I think you see that trend in his movies.
So. I never noticed it, but it's so much so.
So I never liked it for that reason. But if I like an artist, I still like them, even if their personal life, they're not somebody I'd want to be friends with.
No, I mean, by all accounts, Miles Davis was not a good human being, but, he's the greatest trumpet player ever and his music is untouchable. I mean, there's, that's sort of an easy example, but it's, it's true. I mean, you can't totally separate, but in terms of being involved in the lives of the famous people, I mean, I was going to say no one's more obsessive than Star Trek fans. I don't know if that's necessarily true, but certainly Star Trek fans are famously obsessive and love, Leonard Nimoy's famous, I am not Spock. And then eventually he wrote, I am Spock and kind of embraced it. But I think it took him a while because these guys were just actors. Right. They were just people like, hey, this is a job. They could have been on, Bonanza or whatever the hell else was on at that time or some other show. And it just they didn't know it was going to turn into this. And initially it didn't, it sort of got big and then suddenly it got amazingly big. And now there's like 9 series or something. I was looking on CBS All Access the other day and it's grown into, I mean, you could spend a lot of time forget about just on if you just pick one series, but if you went through everything, I mean, forget about it. I don't even have time to get to all the new stuff.
But so when it comes to Patrick Stewart, there's a little bit of a difference in that his character, Picard, is written to be better than us, to be a more evolved human. It combined with Patrick Stewart playing it beautifully, really classical actor. He becomes something bigger than the person that he is, sort of showing a way of living that we can strive for, which makes him sort of an icon. And I was watching some show that was like Myths and Monsters, and it was comparing Star Wars characters to some of the like long time, like the hero, the villain, the wise one. Star Trek doesn't play out that way. It's very unique. It has its own tropes.
Mm.
There's always someone with sort of autistic or autistic bit of qualities who's trying to understand why people are the way they are and the choices that they're making, like Data, like Seven of Nine. But there's only one Picard.
Right.
There isn't someone like that in any other series that's a little bit better than us, who makes better choices consistently, is brave consistently.
How much of a man of action is he in Next Generation? Because I'm watching this, and I feel like there's more action on Picard than there was on Next Generation in general.
Absolutely.
You know, I thought that's what you were going to say. Star Trek fans had a problem with, like, you know, because people really didn't like the third one of the new movies, Star Trek Beyond, because it was basically like Fast and the Furious Star Trek. Mm-hmm. Said because it was the director of Fast and the Furious, but that I thought maybe that was what you were going to say is one of the things they didn't like. So that's not a problem.
Not that I'm aware of. I'll say this too, from watching it, there's a lot in Picard that looks like other sci-fi fantasy things that have been very attractive through the years. So there's a character who physically looks kind of like he's from Lord of the Rings. And there's a relationship in it that has, and I'm not a Game of Thrones fan, that's way too graphic for me, but there's something in it that I think is a little like that. And then there's a couple of moments that made me feel a little like Star Wars.
Okay. Interesting.
But I'm not mad about that. I mean, things gotta appeal to. It's just like I was never mad that Jerry Ryan was in a cat suit. Like, it's gotta appeal. It's gotta get everybody watching, or else you can't sell ads.
Jerry Ryan's in a cat suit on Picard, or she's in a cat suit on
Voyager.
On Voyager, okay.
Yeah.
All right. Look, you know, they know what sells.
Yeah, exactly. So it never bothered me for that reason. It's whatever's going to get people watching it, and we're hoping that there was intended to be a second season. Hopefully, there will be a second season. It's on hold, just like all entertainment is right now.
Oh, they haven't filmed it yet.
No.
Oh, okay, that's too bad. That's too bad. Now they made, in case anybody didn't hear, they made it free. They put it out, and you can now get it for free, which is obviously very, very nice for all of us cheapskates who were on the fence. I had already signed up for a free trial, and I was sort of working my way through that way. But the idea that you can get, at least, you know, you can get your Picard for, you know, because, you know, it's 9 episodes. You can get through that. It's not that big a deal. And they go quick. That's the thing that really impressed me, is the speed that it feels when you're watching it. Like I looked up and there was 10 minutes left in the episode. I was like, oh my God, how did that happen? Like, it really does move very fast.
I wonder how the series would look to somebody who's not familiar with Star Trek. I wonder, because there are new characters in it. There are some really amazing. Raffi is awesome. There's amazing new characters, but there's also so many people in it that have been through Star Trek.
Yeah, they're like Clancy. I definitely recognized. It just didn't it didn't ring a bell. And I'm sure there's others that I haven't, you know, but and I'm sure there's others, like the main characters. I know Seven of Nine shows up. I know Riker shows up, at least based on the you know, coming next. One other interesting thing about this, just an aside, is that it's filmed more like a network TV show, or at least it's structured like, not, I guess maybe not in the content itself, but the way they do, like, you know, next time on Picard, you know, like that. You don't get that on Netflix. You don't get that on your binge watching things, and that they release new episodes on Thursday as opposed to just dumping the whole thing and letting you watch everything. You know, it's a little more like a TV show.
But it's and if anything, if there's any series that it's more like, I would say it's more like Deep Space Nine. Deep Space Nine is extremely serial. You can't just pick up an episode and know where you are. I mean, you can watch an episode, but I feel like Picard is the most serial of any.
Oh no, it's a mystery. I mean, it's,
Yeah.
hey, I want to find out who did, this thing, and I'm gonna, go off into space, and I'm gonna find it, and I'm gonna put a crew together. I think it could definitely appeal to someone. I don't know of how someone who doesn't like Star Trek. Like, I think it could be someone who's not really up on, like, I'm not nearly as caught up on Next Generation as I could be, but I still was right there. But like, I know who they are. I know what a Borg is. Like, I know what these things are.
Mhm.
But I know who Locutus is. Like, there's things. Like, there's definitely but it's like somehow it's all there. So maybe I've seen more episodes than I realize. But at the same time, someone who has no idea from Star Trek, at all, like, I do wonder if they could watch this and still get a lot of enjoyment out of it. I guess if they at least were into sci-fi, then maybe
Mhm.
that would be okay.
I'll
Right.
actually be interested to see what you think going forward, because there are a few people in it who are in like one episode of Next Generation. Not anybody would think they would be involved in something like this. That
Oh,
were
I'll miss it. I mean, that'll just go right past me. I mean, look, I still get excited if I'm reading a Star Trek novel and Yeoman Rand is in it, because and to me, she was a very important part of it. I believe she's only in the first season, but she was just a very prominent, small character, not a major character, but she shows up. She was the blonde yeoman that was clearly in love with Kirk, and had the aging episode. She has an amazing moment. It's actually where she's like, no, I don't want you to see me like this. You'll think I'm ugly, and it's
she's
obviously
a great actress
she's
too.
a terrific actress, terrific actress. But it was nice that she got to actually do that, as opposed to just serving the captain coffee, which is mostly what she does.
Yeah,
But for whatever
that
reason,
hair.
yeah, the hair. There's so much about the hair, so much about that hair. But that's another testament, I think, to Star Trek in general, is that a character like that lasts. That this is not someone with a ton going on, but when you put them into a novel, and one of my probably top two or three favorite Star Trek novels is the Captain's Daughter, where Sulu gets a daughter, which is
Mm.
just it's fantastic. It's really a good read, even if you only kind of, as long as you like George Takei and you like Sulu, you're gonna love it. It's really, really good. But there there's a point when they're talking, and they're sort of talking as if they've been old friends for a long time. She's moved up in Starfleet. He's now a captain, and there's something really charming about it. This idea that they were friends and they stayed friends throughout, whatever, 50 years or however long it's been. And that's something that I don't know that you get on other things. Like with a Star Wars, it's just a contained story, and that's it. Like, there are these extraneous Star Wars novels that a lot of people like, but to me, I've tried reading them and they never really hit me in quite the same way, just because the characters aren't as strong.
How much of a Star Wars fan are you?
It's interesting, when we were getting ready for the show that we did not, the show that you were producing did not get to happen. I wrote a bunch of stuff, and one of the things I was going to do is that I love Star Wars, but there are 11 movies and 3 of them are good, which is not a great track record,
No.
And some people might say maybe 4, but nobody says they're all good. Nobody's going to sit there and tell you that very few people like the prequels. Those are generally hated, and those are huge. I mean, those were huge multi-million-dollar movies. Return of the Jedi is kind of a weak movie. When you come right down to it.
Do you think Return of the Jedi is a weak movie? That's
It's
like one that people love.
Really, I mean, you've got, as it was explained to me, he in an earlier version of his first Star Wars script, he had a whole thing that's set on the Wookiee planet, which is called Kashyyyk, and I know that because I'm a nerd. But
That was probably the nerdiest thing you've done this whole
yes,
time.
exactly. Today, well, I'm sitting here wearing Spock ears, so I think we're not surprised. But supposedly, all he did was said, let's just shrink the Wookiees. Let's have the Wookiee, let's use the same material, but we'll just shrink the Wookiees down and we'll call them Ewoks.
Mhm.
It's like, okay, fine. I guess that's, good. But it's not the most creative of the episodes. It doesn't have, like, the first Star Wars is amazing because it's the first one. And there's just, introduces all this really cool stuff, and it does it, in a really good way. And it's a terrific story. And you introduce these fun characters. And you've got this great, set piece moment where Luke comes back and he blows up the Death Star and he uses the Force. Hey, isn't this exciting? Then you get to Empire Strikes Back, which has one of the great reveals, in that kind of movie history. No, Luke, I am your father. Like, oh my God! I blew my mind. It just went crazy. And then you've got these little teddy bear things running around, and they're cooking people, and then they have another Death Star, and it's just like, like, it's just not as good. And then you got the prequels, which are weak. The prequels are just generally, these are the movies that he gave us Samuel L. Jackson with a lightsaber and made it boring. That was his
Yeah,
great
yeah.
achievement there. And then I like Rogue One, which I did not like Solo. And then these new three movies, I feel like they were like, let's make a movie. They didn't come out of any compelling story thing. So I didn't mean to go off on that for quite so long. But
Yeah.
that's where I come from on Star Wars. I love it, but at the same time, there's a lot of it that I don't like, considering how much I genuinely do like it.
I have no problem with Star Wars.
Okay.
That's where I stand. I don't understand why they get. It's just an interesting thing I learned a few months ago about how they are related, and that has to do with Star Trek actually trying to get on the bandwagon of the success that Star Wars had.
Yes.
And I think that Star Wars is easier to watch. It's easier to relate to the characters. There's a lot of science in Star Trek.
Oh, there's a lot of talking.
There's a lot of talking, yeah.
Tremendous amount of talking.
A lot of making up words too, like science mixed with science fiction and making up words. And you have to, I mean, if you don't know what a core breach is, you don't know why everyone's so upset.
That's a good point. Yeah, someone said in was it Last Jedi? There's one of these movies where the whole plot in Star Wars, it all centers around fuel. I don't know, are you familiar with Cinema Sins on YouTube?
No.
They do everything wrong with, whatever movies. They have a little counter and they sin the movie. Like they sort of go through the movie and they go, oh, this is wrong, this is wrong, this is wrong. And it's all done. It's meant to be humorous. And it usually is. It's a pretty funny series. But on Last Jedi, they said, have they ever mentioned fuel in a Star Wars movie? And I thought about it and I was like, I think maybe somebody was refueling, but certainly it's not like on Star Trek where the dilithium crystals or, whatever. It's a huge thing that comes up frequently. Like it's a problem. There's going to be a core breach. Oh crap! What are we going to do? The nuclear pile is going to melt down. Like that. It doesn't happen on Star Wars. That's just it doesn't go that deep.
Don't they go to places and put their ships on planets to get green or blue milk and fuel their ships?
They do, but they don't really talk about it that much. Like, it's not a major, for it to suddenly be their point in this, and I'm not sure they're right, but I think they are, is that for it to suddenly be a major plot point is a little suspect, because it's like all of a sudden something that we've never established as being a rule in this universe. Like core breach is the thing that happens in the Star Trek universe. Like that's sort of a common thing. And so when it happens, it's not like if there have been, 7 seasons and suddenly there's a core breach, you'd be like, what? I don't understand. So that was what they were saying that this was, nobody's ever talked about fuel and suddenly fuel was the big problem.
It's interesting. I just had a flash of a way that an episode of Next Generation really does have a similarity to things that are going through now. And that is an episode where time is slowed down very, very much so on the Enterprise. I believe Data and Picard are not with them. They're on some kind of away mission. They come back and they find amongst things. Troy's with them as well. They find amongst things that the core is breaching, but it's moving very, very slow. And one of them says something like, "How do we stop it?" And Data's like, "It's not a question of stopping it. It's going to happen. What do we do now?" And that brings us back to what we were talking about. How do I feel about people who are like, I've had enough, I'm going out anyway. Well, if we do that, it's going to spread more.
100%.
So then what do we do? I'm going to stay in. I'm going to keep staying in.
Oh, I honestly, I feel like that's what Spock and Data and, like you think about sort of the Star Trek smart people. Like who would you listen to? And I feel like that's what they would advise. Is just, everyone that I have seen that's saying stay home is someone that I trust. It hasn't been like Alex Jones has not come out on his show and said, you guys gotta stay home. You gotta stay home. Like it's been the smart people. It's, like I talked to a nurse, this guy, Mike Lee, who's a comedian. He's also a nurse. And I talked to him and I was like, what can we do? He said, stay home.
Is he working with people currently?
Yeah. Oh yeah. No, I interviewed him on my morning radio show. I mean, I have nothing but respect for someone who is doing that. Cause I mean, I understand that he's a nurse and that's his job, but he doesn't have to go in. I mean, he could decide I'm not doing that,
Yeah.
and I wouldn't blame him. That's okay. If you don't want to go in, that's all right. I mean, the sense of duty that you might have on Star Trek, like the Starfleet sense of duty, that can exist in life, but it's not quite the same thing. Like he's not obligated to do it. He doesn't have
Right.
to. He doesn't have to. He's not.
Well,
He's not.
there is that. I think that there is obviously a military component to Starfleet. People who are working in the military have that sense of honor and sense of duty. More so. I wonder, who do you think Dr. Fossey is most? Dr. Fossey, is that how you say his name? The
Oh,
doctor
I don't know. I can't. I've seen it written more. I think I know. I think I would say Fauci, but that's totally wrong.
Are you sure?
No, I'm not. I think. I mean, it looks in my head like Fauci, but that doesn't make sense because there's not an H.
God, we are such nerds. Like you can recite any. You even knew exactly when the Wookiees were shrunk down to.
I know the planet the Wookiees are from, but I don't know the name of the doctor who's potentially in charge of saving the human race.
Yes, exactly.
Priorities. Got to have priorities. Who do I think he's most like? Oh God, I mean, he seems to have almost a Spock-like calm, doesn't he? Like he really,
Yeah.
I mean, he's definitely not McCoy-like. I mean, McCoy would be up there like, you don't understand. We're all gonna die. You got to stay home.
I think McCoy's kind of like Como.
Yeah, a little bit. I can see that. How are you finding Cuomo? Are you finding him soothing?
I find him soothing.
Okay.
How about you?
I haven't seen a press conference in full yet. I've only seen a little bit. So
Really?
Well, it just.
How have you avoided it?
Because I don't really leave the TV on. So, which is kind of my own way of, not going nutsy, is that if I don't leave it on, then I'm not watching it all the time. And plus I've been sort of, the way I'm trying to keep from going nuts and all this is trying to stay as busy as I can. We're doing this. I got a show I do every day. I'm doing a virtual open mic, trying to figure out how we can do a show. It'll probably be something like this. I don't know how that's going to work, but okay. I kind of feel like let's try it. Worst thing can happen is nobody shows up. Which is so it's just like a regular show. Worst thing can happen is no one shows up. We'll just do it. We'll see what happens. I want people to be able to get some kind of feedback,
Yeah, there is that feeling when you tell a joke and people laugh that wouldn't be present.
Yeah. No, I did a mic today and we shut everybody else's mics off while the person was going, and it was definitely like, boy, do I want those laughs. I really missed that laughter. That was nice. Who do you think would be more equipped to deal with this, Spock or Data?
Data, absolutely. Data can't get it.
Oh, that's a really good point.
Spock would be calm, and if Spock got it, he would be like, I need to inform you, I have the virus. He wouldn't be upset by it. But Data couldn't get it.
That's a really good point. I did not think of that. Yeah.
So are you watching Picard long enough to know how people feel about synths,
Oh yeah, that's fascinating. I was fascinated by that. This idea that, first of all, that the Romulans don't even have AIs.
Mm-hmm.
It's almost a throwaway line, but it was very important. One of the two Romulans that's taking care of Picard on Chateau Picard, which, come on, doesn't that look like the best place ever? I mean,
who wouldn't want to hang out there and drink wine with all of them? They're home cooking everything.
Oh my God, what a fabulous place! I don't know where they filmed it, but it looks just.
They got
beautiful.
that pit bull named Number One.
Oh, so funny! Come on, Number One. So
who
funny.
Takes the biggest number twos, like everybody's watching that, like, whoa.
But they say something about how Romulans just don't trust computers for anything but like numerical functions. And I'm not really sure how far that goes. Like they said that, and I'm like, really? Like I feel like but what about ships? I mean, don't you need to fly a ship? Don't you need sort of more advanced computer?
Don't they have computers in episodes of other series where they're interacting or talking to the computer in the way people talk to Alexa?
That's the thing. That's what so I mean, it may not track. It may be one of those things that like it's a good line, it's interesting, but it doesn't actually line up with the other episodes. Now, are there not Vulcans in Next Generation? Because
no,
there are Vulcans.
Yeah, yeah.
Because there's no Vulcan on the main crew, though, right?
No.
So I assume that was the distance from the original series.
Yeah, we wanted to do something different. Sarek's actually in a couple of episodes.
I'm sorry, who's?
Sarek.
I know. I did not know that, and I heard that just in sort of my researching for the show, and I got to dig those up because that was like Sarek was like my dad. Like I mean, not
Yeah.
actually like my dad, but like my substitute dad. I felt I was just really strong feelings about Sarek.
I'm going to make a comedy spin-off called Everybody Loves Sarek. The most loved character.
I wish there was like a Star Trek nightly talk show because that would be a great sketch. That would be fantastic. Only Star Trek people would get it, but that's a lot of people.
Yep.
You know, there's a lot of people who love Star Trek. Come on. So.
And everybody who loves Star Trek loves Sarek. And people who've even seen a little bit of Star Trek go, yeah, Sarek's great.
I mean, that episode where Journey to Babel, the original series episode, where he's up there and Spock is like, no, these are my parents, and it's like that's just again like one of the great reveals, and just sort of amazing moments of television. I mean, that I could sit down and watch that episode right now. I've probably seen that episode, a dozen times. It's so good. I mean, it's a particularly good example, but also just that relationship between him and Sarek is just fascinating. That was something they did really well in the new movies. Sort of this idea that Spock, about half human, half human, half Vulcan, how Vulcan society doesn't necessarily embrace him, because of that. The scene with the little kid with young Spock and the kids are teasing him.
Right.
That I just thought that was
yeah.
That was just so clever.
And
but no,
you and I have talked about that, having grown up with people who look different than us. We both have that in common. So
sure,
definitely both of us relate to in just being different than the other kids we grew up with.
100%. So I mean, that scene resonated for me really hard, and I thought it was clever. It was sort of a good way. It was a good example of kind of using what's there and taking it to a really good, not an extreme, but just sort of taking it to a logical conclusion. But yeah, the whole thing with synths, I think, because I feel like we maybe in society are not distrustful enough of AIs. I feel like we're just sort of giving it up to AIs, and it's like, whatever. And I don't know how I feel about that. I don't think that's a good thing.
It's interesting, and I think it's like a good place to close, because sure. I think that right now, especially, our relationships with our AI, our cell phones and our TVs, it's so everything right now. I spend way more time with my phone than I normally do. My phone knows more about me than any human being. It's not good. It's not healthy. I love this. Somebody did an experiment to find out how exactly we are addicted to our cell phones. So they put electrodes on people's brains and they had them interact with different things in their lives and had them interact with the phone. And what they learned is that people are not addicted to their cell phones. They love their cell phones.
Ooh.
Which is really creepy.
Oh, that's so creepy. That's so disturbing. And what if you cell phone? Oh, sorry,
yeah, and I'm aware of, sometimes I have friends who I'll talk to, I got their backs to me and they don't even think anything of it, or how jealous my parrot can be of my cell phone.
Wait, your parrot is jealous of your cell phone? Like
in a
noticeable way?
Yeah.
What does the parrot do?
She will like kind of grab my finger, push it away, or, push past it because she wants me to pet her. Look at her. She's life. She's my pet. She's my love. My phone is an object. It's a computer. It's a tool.
Wow.
Can you hear her?
Oh, of course I can. It's wonderful.
Yeah.
I think that's great. I love it. But wow, that's so interesting. I never thought of that. Like I'm now picturing sort of dogs coming over to people and nuzzling them, please pet me, instead of whatever the hell, like, they see it as you're petting another thing.
Yeah.
Why are you giving love to that thing that, I mean, I would say it can't give love back, but that's sort of the creepy thing, is it does kind of give love.
It does.
It gives you these little serotonin shots when, you get a like, or there's just, I don't know. I always want to talk about this on stage, and I always feel like this just makes me look like a cranky old man, but I find it disturbing. I guess maybe I don't have a joke yet is really the problem, but.
I went to Canada for a few days with my husband a bunch of years ago, and our phones didn't work there, and it was really cool.
Where in Canada did your phones not work?
It was in Montreal, not Montreal, in Niagara Falls. But we just we didn't have the international.
Oh, okay. So, yeah, yeah. So you didn't get an international plan. Okay.
Yeah. And I mean, now probably things are different with that, but then it would have been expensive and just not worth it. So I just didn't have a phone.
Yeah,
It
that
was
sounds
nice.
nice.
Yeah. So maybe that's like a thing. Take an hour off away.
Yeah, I
But
think that's good advice. That's definitely good advice. I've been trying to take breaks. I've been reading comic books or
right.
um,
But
so
that's easy. That's also easy for us to say. We're both married people. There are people out there who are completely by themselves.
no, I have a lot of sympathy for that. There, New York just posted there's a mental health hotline for people, and that is, I think, incredibly important. I mean, I'm trying to. Do you feel like you need to check in on people? I sort of make the
Mm-hmm.
rounds, like, okay,
Yeah.
this person's not this person's by themselves. This person's by themselves. You know,
Mm-hmm.
just shoot them a text, just something, just to kind of say, hey, how you doing? What's going on? You
Yeah.
know, there was one case where someone that I don't know that well, but they seemed like they weren't doing that well. So I reached out to another friend who knows them better. And I was like, could you maybe check in on this person? Like, I'm not trying to be button ski, but
Yeah.
I kind of feel like they need someone who knows them better to give, to check in and sort of see how they're doing. Because
Yeah. And
it's not easy.
I don't know. I wouldn't have fared well with this the way I am if I was completely by myself. And I do believe that before things got to the point where we were completely isolated, I would have gone and stayed with one of my friends,
Mm.
probably.
Yeah, no, I think that makes sense. And just to sort of tie it up with Star Trek, there is a lot of togetherness.
Mm-hmm.
There is a lot of, I mean, Picard is on Chateau Picard, but he's not he's got two people helping him that are not just helpers. They're not, home health aides. They're
Yeah.
clearly people that he's close. Are they from Next Generation at all? Those two?
Not that I know of.
Okay. But they clearly have a relationship. Like they're
Yeah.
clearly very close. And I thought that was actually kind of nice. Like he's not trying to be, a rugged man. He's going to tough it out all by himself. Like, no, he needs help. So sometimes we all need help. And there's nothing wrong with that.
Yeah.
So, all right. You want to stop there?
Yeah, let's stop there. Thank you so much for listening. Reach out to people. Stay home.
Reach out to people. Yeah, stay home, but keep reaching out to people. And we'll be back next week.
Yeah.
Live long and prosper.
Live long and prosper.